Ahoy there, me hearties! This be Captain Silverhook, and you're listening to the Two Old Pirates podcast. Set sail for an open sea of stories, tales, and some really crazy stuff. I expect you to like and subscribe, lest you be walking the plank. Ha ha ha!
Hey, this is Eric of the Two Old Pirates. Welcome to podcast episode 122. We've been doing very, very well with some of our past podcast episodes, so let's keep that trend going. Let's watch. If you've not subscribed, please subscribe. We're almost at 1,300 subscribers. That's a pretty big deal for us. Anyways, today we're going to be talking about an unsolved cold case out of South Texas. I had never heard about this before. This was pointed out to me by a friend. And they're like, have you never heard about this? I said, no. So I looked into it. I stayed up to about 2 o'clock in the morning the other night trying to get all the information that I possibly could since it's an older case. So this is the case of what happened to Coach Kenny Hilscher. Okay. We have to go back to 1995. In 1995, in the small town called Bloomington, Texas, which is about, I want to say it's about 13 miles from Victoria, Texas, which is about 60,000 population. Bloomington's a much, much smaller community. Around that time, it was about 2,000 people. And there was a coach there named Kenny Hilscher. I believe it had been his first year as the varsity head basketball coach, and they'd made the playoffs. And what was unique about Kenny, Coach Kenny, was that he had gone to school at Bloomington and had gone to the playoffs in the 70s when he was a kid. Then all these years later, he came back to his hometown, which to me is one of the most awesome things you can do if you're an educator. And he worked his way up through the ranks, and he finally, in the 94-95 year, I believe, became the head varsity boys basketball coach and led them to the playoffs for the first time since he was at the high school. So it was a pretty big deal. Everything that I've read and seen about Coach Kenny at that, he always dressed to the nines. He always dressed very, very professionally. Not saying that some of us don't as teachers and stuff, but they said he dressed very, very professionally every single day. Shirts, pants, everything was like very, very sharp looking. Got along with the kids. He coached several sports and he taught science, I believe. And they just really cared about him. They really loved him. It was a small community. Everybody knew Coach Kenny. Well, what ended up happening was on April 8th of 1995, so that was 30 years ago this school year. So Coach Kenny on April 8th had gone to the district track meet that day. It was a Saturday, and he had spent all day there, and he decided to come back and go to his parents' house, who also lived in Bloomington. Like I said, they were a homegrown family, and so they cared about Bloomington. He stopped by his parents' house that night and was telling his dad about the track results at the district track meet. And his dad says, it's getting kind of late. Why don't you just stay here the night with us, and we can go to church in the morning. And Coach Kenny said, I've got groceries out in the truck, Dad, and besides, I was thinking about going down to the beach tomorrow on Sunday and getting some sun, and then later on there's like a get-together. I'm going to go to that. So I already kind of have plans. I really appreciate it, Dad, but I'll take you up on that offer some other time. And they said their goodbyes, and Coach Kenny left. Nobody really talked to Coach Kenny on that Sunday. His mom and dad didn't hear from him, and it was just a usual thing. He was a grown man. He was 36. And but on Monday, when school started at Bloomington ISD, Coach Kenny wasn't there, and he had not called in for a sub. Now later on, when they talked to the principal of the school, he said Coach Kenny was almost like a perfectionist when he came to class. If he was going to be out, he planned it well in advance, and he always made sure there was going to be a substitute, and there was always lesson plans ready for that substitute. So this was very, very much unlike him to go and just miss the day. So by 11 o'clock in the morning, after people repeatedly tried to call Coach Kenny and there was no answer, they finally called his parents. His dad answered. Now this is on Monday morning, mind you. So the last time anybody really talked to him was Saturday night when he was leaving his parents' house. His dad said, no, I haven't seen him since Saturday. What do you mean? The dad gets in his car and drives over. Now, where Coach Kenny's house was, it was about a mile away from the closest It was on the outskirts of Bloomington, and he was about a mile away from his next neighbor. And his house is about 300 feet set off the road. So that's about a football field off the road that you have to drive to. And when his dad got to his house, he looked and he could see the truck was there. So Kenny's truck was there. And he's like, He pulls up. As he gets out, he looks at the truck and he looks in. The keys are still in the ignition. Red flag. The groceries from evidently Saturday night are still in the truck. Red flag number 2. Goes up. The house is open. Kenny's nowhere to be found. So he gets on with the police, calls them, and says, my son is missing. The last time anybody spoke to him that we know of was myself and my wife on Saturday night. It is now Monday, and we need help. Before you know it, there was a grassroots group of people that were walking all over the place, through the weeds, down by the water, anywhere that they could possibly go and try to find where Kenny might be. There's people out on horses, and they had cops and helicopters flying above. So the community really came together. They really, really were hoping for the best situation for Kenny. Later on that day, on a road just a little ways away from Kenny's house, one of the searchers found on the side of the road a white t-shirt and a pair of men's underwear. Now, on Saturday, his father said the last thing he had seen his son in was a white t-shirt, black shorts, a black wristwatch, his A&M ring, and shoes. Well, minus Kenny and the ring, there were no shoes and there were no shorts, but there was a white t-shirt and there were underwear. When they picked up the t-shirt, it was stained with blood. Another red flag. They sent it off, and remember, the DNA has progressed hugely since then. But back then, when they typed his blood, they said it's within a 98% range that it's his. From what they had seen on the t-shirt, it looked like whoever was wearing the t-shirt, and it was more than likely Kenny, had been shot at least twice in the back and at least once in the front by shotgun blasts. So the pellets had gone through. Now, mind you, there was no blood at the scene at his house, and as far as I know from everything that I've heard and read during this doing this deep dive, there was none found at the scene, only on the shirt. So it's like somebody just threw it out. So that was on April the 10th. People kept searching, kept looking everywhere. So while Coach Kenny was missing, they had people get together, and they would have search parties all over the area and stuff. They went up by Victoria and over by Port Lavaca, and they searched everywhere to try to find Coach Kenny, and they weren't finding anything. I've heard about interviews with the principal of the school where his voice is shaking and cracking because he was so sad that he was missing one of his favorite teachers and coaches. The kids were inconsolable. The town put yellow ribbons up all over the place on anything they could tie him to, trying to hope that Coach Kenny would come back. His players the next year, and the kids that were in football, basketball, and baseball all wore patches that said Coach H. The UIL found out about this and sent a letter to Bloomington ISD saying, you can't use that. It's not an official patch for the school to use. To show you how much these kids love Coach Kenny, they decided that they would sit out their whole season. We're talking about like seniors that have played all through junior high and high school and stuff. Coach Kenny meant so much to them that they're like, we're going to forfeit. And enough people got upset about that the UIL backed down and said, okay, you can wear those. And so the football team, the basketball team, and the baseball team all wore special patches that year for Coach Kenny. As an educator, I think that's amazing. I think that's one of the most beautiful things I've ever heard about kids coming together for a teacher or a coach. I think they understood just how deep the commitment went to this community to try to find Coach Kenny. And inside the school, teachers and students would all wear green ribbons that said Coach H. And this happened for a while. We're in 2025 now, and there has been nothing about Coach Kenny that has ever popped up that was a hot lead. There are a couple things that I saw where one man had said that he wanted to get something off of his chest about what might have happened that day, and evidently the local police investigated it and came back with Didn't find anything. Then there was another person who was found deceased at the site where those clothes had been found way back in 1995. But when they did the autopsy, they found out the person had died from a heart attack. So they just happened to be around the same place at the same time. So there's been nothing in 30 years that is a hardcore piece of evidence of who did this, why they did this, where the body might be. Now, when I say that, I wish Coach Kenny was still alive. Of course I do. But after 30 years, this man would be 66 now. And in 30 years, he never reached out to anybody to sit there and say, hey, I had to get out of here. Finding the t-shirt with the blood all over it and the shotgun pellet holes through it. He was killed. He was assassinated. He was murdered. I just don't know where or why or by who. And I'm in the same boat of any of you that's watching this. Like, we'd like to get justice for Coach Kenny. I don't know if that'll ever happen. Coach Kenny was a much beloved person, and people still talk about him to this day. Coach Kenny was 5'7", 160 pounds, blonde hair, blue eyes. He was 36 when he went missing. He lived alone, no children, and that's it. That's all the Texas DPS has. Now, I have included their phone number on here. Anybody that's watching this up by the Victoria area or anywhere in here, South Texas, ever heard anything about Coach Kenny Hilscher and his disappearance 30 years ago in the small town of Bloomington, Texas, please reach out to somebody. It's never too late to go ahead and tip the scales of justice in the right way so that people will find out what happened to their loved one, so a community can put it to rest about what happened to their beloved coach. I never knew Kenny. I was in college at the time. I was just a kid, but I'm old and I've taught a long time. And I think that the way the community and the kids and the principal and everybody came together for Coach Kenny is a definite statement to the man he was and how much he influenced and made a difference. And 30 years on, we need to find out who did this. I hope that you've enjoyed this. Please reach out to the Texas Department of Public Safety at the phone number that I've had down here. Anyways, for the Two Old Pirates, I'm Eric. I hope that you enjoy this episode. And let's find the people that did this to Coach Kenny. Peace.